I didn't find out Emily was cheating in some dramatic, movie-style way. No lipstick on collars. No hotel receipts. It was quieter than that. And somehow, that made it worse. My name's Logan. I'm 25, born and raised in a small town most people pass through without noticing. One main street. One bar everyone pretends they don't go to. The kind of place where people recognize your truck before they recognize your face. Emily and I had been together almost 3 years. She was 24. We met right after college, and for a long time, I thought she was it. The person you build a life around because it feels easier than imagining anything else. That's probably where I went wrong. The first sign wasn't obvious. It was just distance. Emily started keeping her phone face down, started taking longer to reply. When I asked how her day was, I got summaries instead of stories. Fine. Busy. Tired. I told myself that was normal. People grow. Relationships settle. That's what everyone says when they don't want to admit something's breaking. The night that sticks with me happened on a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were our nights. Pizza, some dumb show we half-watched, her feet tucked under my leg on the couch. That night, she was late. Not by much. 20 minutes. But she didn't text. When she finally walked in, she smelled different. Not bad. Just unfamiliar. Like a cologne that didn't belong to me. Everything okay? I asked. She smiled too quickly. Yeah, just work. That was the moment I realized I didn't recognize the smile anymore. A week later, I saw the name on her phone by accident. We were sitting at the kitchen table, and she slid her phone away just a second too slow. A message preview flashed. One line. Can't stop thinking about last night. The name was saved as E. I didn't say anything. I hated myself for that, but I didn't. I spent the rest of the evening nodding, pretending to listen, replaying that single sentence in my head until it felt burned into my skull. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Emily was always friendly. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe I was paranoid. But once the thought is there, it infects everything. Every late night. Every canceled plan. Every time she turned away from me in bed. I started noticing patterns. She dressed nicer for errands. She guarded her phone like it held state secrets. And worst of all, she stopped looking at me the way she used to. Not angry. Not sad. Just empty. The confrontation didn't happen the way I imagined either. No shouting. No crying. I asked her, straight up, one Sunday morning while coffee was still brewing. Is there someone else? She froze. That's how I knew before she said anything. Her answer came out soft, rehearsed. It's not what you think. It was exactly what I thought. She admitted it eventually. Emotional at first, she said. Then physical. A guy from a nearby town. Older. He listens, she added, like that was supposed to explain everything. I moved out that afternoon. For weeks after, I felt hollow. Angry, yeah, but mostly stupid. Like I'd missed something obvious everyone else could see. I started going to a small coffee shop on the edge of town, mostly because it was quiet and no one asked questions. That's where I met Rachel. She was sitting alone, reading, completely unbothered by the world around her. 35, I'd later learn. Calm. Observant. When she looked up and met my eyes, it felt like she saw straight through the mess I was trying to hide. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the beginning of everything changing. I didn't talk to Rachel that first day. Not really. We exchanged a polite nod, the kind strangers give each other when they've accidentally made eye contact for a second too long. I ordered my coffee, sat by the window, and pretended to scroll through my phone while my thoughts ran in circles. But she noticed things. I could tell. The next time I came in, 2 days later, she was there again. Same corner table. Same book. When I stood in line, she glanced up and smiled, slower this time, like she actually recognized me. Rough week? She asked casually, as if we'd known each other longer than 10 seconds. I almost laughed. Is it that obvious? She closed her book. You stir your coffee like you're trying to drown something. That did it. I sat down across from her without even thinking. Rachel was 35. She told me that up front, the way someone does when they're comfortable with themselves. No games. No hesitation. She worked remotely, had moved to town a few years back for quiet, and didn't bother pretending this place was anything special. What about you? She asked. What brings you here in the middle of a workday, looking like you just lost a war? I surprised myself by telling her the truth. Not all of it. Just enough. Girlfriend cheated. Recently single. Didn't feel like going home. Rachel listened without interrupting. No sympathy face. No fake outrage. Just attention. That hurts, she said when I finished. More than people admit. We started talking after that. Not flirting. Not yet. Just conversation. Books. Town gossip. The strange comfort of being around someone who didn't already know my history. I didn't tell her Emily's name. I didn't have to. Over the next couple of weeks, the coffee shop became routine. Rachel and I didn't always meet there on purpose, but it started feeling that way. Sometimes we talked for an hour. Sometimes 10 minutes. Sometimes we just sat in silence, which somehow felt easier than filling the space with noise. Emily texted during that time. Apologies. Confusion. I miss you. I didn't respond. Every message felt like reopening a wound that had barely started to scab over. Rachel noticed my phone lighting up one afternoon. You don't have to answer, she said, not looking at the screen. But you should decide why you're not. That stuck with me. One night, after the coffee shop closed, Rachel asked if I wanted to take a walk. The town was quiet, streetlights buzzing softly, the air cool enough to clear your head. We talked about regret, about choices that seem small until they ruin something big. You're not broken, she said at one point. You're just young enough to think this defined you. I asked her why she was still here. In this town. Alone. She smiled. I wasn't always. There was something in her voice, experience, maybe, that made me feel both safe and exposed at the same time. The first moment of real tension came a few days later. Emily showed up at my place unannounced. I hadn't changed the locks yet. She cried. She apologized again. She said it was a mistake, that she didn't know why she did it. I listened, calm, detached, and for the first time, I realized I didn't want her back. Not because of anger, but because something had shifted. That night, I went to the coffee shop even though it was closed. Rachel was locking up. Turns out she helped the owner occasionally. You okay? She asked. I nodded, then shook my head. No, but I will be. She stepped closer, not touching, just close enough that I could feel her presence. That's the right answer, she said. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment when pain stopped being the center of my story and started becoming fuel. After that night, things between Rachel and me changed in a way I didn't know how to name yet. There was no sudden confession, no dramatic moment where everything snapped into place. It was subtler, heavier, like a door had opened somewhere in my head, and I couldn't pretend I hadn't noticed it. We didn't rush anything. If anything, Rachel slowed me down. People confuse intensity with connection. She told me one afternoon as we sat outside the coffee shop, paper cups cooling between us. They're not the same. I knew she was right, even if part of me wanted distraction more than understanding. Emily kept orbiting my life. Not physically, she'd stopped showing up, but digitally. Late-night texts, long paragraphs about guilt and confusion, messages that always seemed to end with "I still care about you." I read them. I never answered. Rachel never asked to see them. She didn't need to. She's afraid of being alone, Rachel said once, after noticing my jaw tighten at another notification. That's different from loving you. That sentence hit harder than any insult could have. I started noticing things about Rachel that had nothing to do with attraction. The way she listened without planning her response. The way she didn't soften uncomfortable truths. The way she never pretended to need me. It was unsettling and intoxicating. One evening, she invited me over to her place. Not for anything dramatic. She made that clear. Dinner, she said. Real food. You look like you've been surviving on caffeine and bad decisions. Her house was modest but intentional. Clean lines. Warm lighting. No clutter. It felt like someone had built a life there instead of just passing through it. We cooked together. Talked. Laughed. And somewhere between chopping vegetables and opening a second bottle of wine, I realized how easy it felt to be myself around her. After dinner, we sat on her couch. Close enough that our knees touched. Neither of us moved. This is usually where people mess things up, she said quietly. How? I asked. By pretending this is simpler than it is. I swallowed. Then don't pretend. She looked at me for a long moment. Then nodded. Okay. That was the first time she kissed me. Slow. Deliberate. Like a choice, not a reaction. It wasn't desperate or hungry. It was controlled, and somehow that made it more intense. She pulled back first. This doesn't mean you're healed, she said. And it doesn't mean I'm here to fix you. I know, I said. And for once, I actually did. The next few weeks felt unreal. We didn't define anything. No labels. No expectations. Just time. Conversation. touch that carried weight instead of urgency. And then, one afternoon, Rachel asked a question that shifted everything. Do you still want her to regret it? I frowned. Emily, she nodded. What she did to you? I thought about it. About the nights I'd stared at the ceiling replaying conversations. About the way she'd rewritten our history to make herself feel better. Yes, I said, but I don't want to be cruel. Rachel smiled faintly. Good. Cruelty is sloppy. She didn't say more that day, but I could tell something had started forming in her mind. Not anger-driven. Not reckless. Calculated. A few days later, she asked me to tell her everything. Every detail about Emily. Her habits. Her insecurities. The things she cared about most. At first, it felt wrong. Like reopening a chapter one was trying to close. But Rachel wasn't asking out of obsession. She was asking out of strategy. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about revenge. It was about control. Mine, hers, and the illusion Emily had been living in. I just didn't know yet how far Rachel was willing to take it. I hesitated before telling Rachel everything. Not because I was protecting Emily, but because speaking it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't sure I was ready for. Still, I trusted Rachel. More than I'd trusted anyone in a long time. Emily had always cared about how she was seen. Not in an obvious, influencer kind of way, more subtle than that. She wanted to be perceived as kind, loyal, misunderstood. The victim of circumstances, never the cause. She hates being the bad guy, I told Rachel. Even when she is one. Rachel nodded slowly, like she was filing the information away. That's useful. Over the next week, nothing happened. No dramatic moves. No secret meetings. If anything, Rachel seemed calmer than ever. It made me restless. You're waiting, I said one night. Yes, she replied. So are you. She was right. I wanted something to happen. Some proof that Emily's choices had consequences. But Rachel wasn't interested in spectacle. Revenge that looks like revenge just makes people defensive, she said. The best kind feels like the truth catching up. Emily made the next move herself. She started dating the guy she'd cheated with openly. Posting pictures. Casual captions. As if the overlap didn't exist. As if rewriting the timeline would make it true. That stung more than I expected. Rachel saw the post over my shoulder one afternoon. She's rushing, she said. That's fear. What do we do? I asked. We don't do anything, Rachel replied. Not yet. Instead, Rachel suggested something that felt almost cruel in its simplicity. Live well, she said. Publicly. Calmly. Honestly. She encouraged me to start going out again. Not to hook up. Just to exist. She introduced me to friends from neighboring towns. Took me to events Emily would never have expected me to attend. And she made sure Emily saw it. Not directly. Nothing obvious. Just enough overlap. Mutual friends. Tagged photos. Group shots where Rachel's hand rested casually on my arm. No captions explaining anything. The reaction came fast. Emily texted me that night. Who is she? I didn't respond. Rachel raised an eyebrow when I told her. Good, she said. Silence forces imagination to do the work. A few days later, Emily ran into us at the grocery store. It was accidental, or at least it looked that way. Emily froze when she saw Rachel. Took her in from head to toe. Confident posture. Easy smile. No desperation. Hey, Emily said, her voice tight. Rachel smiled politely. Hi. No name. No context. Nothing for Emily to latch onto. We finished our shopping. Left together. And I could feel Emily's eyes on our backs the entire time. In the car, I exhaled. That felt intense. Rachel glanced at me. That was nothing. I should have asked what she meant. I didn't. The real shift came when Emily started reaching out to mutual friends. Asking questions. Fishing for reassurance. Rachel anticipated it before I even mentioned it. She's going to try to control the narrative, Rachel said. That's where she feels safest. So we stop her? I asked. Rachel shook her head. No. We let her talk. People reveal themselves when they think they're managing perception. It was strange, watching from the outside as Emily slowly unraveled. She posted more. Explained more. Justified herself without being asked. Meanwhile, my life felt better. Calmer. Stronger. Rachel never pushed. Never rushed. She let me arrive at clarity on my own. One night, lying beside her, I asked, what if this turns me into someone I don't like? Rachel traced a line along my arm. Then we stop, she said. But wanting fairness isn't the same as wanting destruction. I believed her. I just didn't realize how close we were to the point where stopping would no longer be an option. By the time I realized Emily was losing control of her own story, it was already too late for her to fix it. People in a small town don't need proof. They need patterns. And Emily was creating them all on her own. Rachel never told anyone what happened between Emily and me. Neither did I. That was the strange part. Our silence was louder than any accusation. Friends started noticing the overlap on their own. The timing. The sudden confidence Emily had with her new boyfriend, paired with the defensiveness that leaked through her posts and conversations. She's overcompensating, Rachel said one evening as we sat on her porch. People who are happy don't explain themselves. Emily texted again. Longer this time. I don't understand why you're doing this. I thought we ended things respectfully. That word, respectfully, almost made me laugh. Rachel read the message after I handed her my phone. She didn't smirk, didn't roll her eyes. She just nodded, like this was exactly the moment she'd been waiting for. She wants absolution, Rachel said. Not reconciliation. Those are different. What do I say? I asked. For the first time, Rachel replied. You say the truth. Briefly. I typed slowly, hands steady. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just not protecting you anymore. I sent it before I could overthink it. Emily didn't reply for 2 days. When she finally did, it wasn't to me. It was to Rachel. I found out because Rachel showed me the message the moment it came in. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're hurting people. Rachel stared at the screen, then locked the phone and set it aside. She broke the rule, she said calmly. What rule? I asked. She made this about you and me, Rachel replied. Which means she's already lost. Emily started unraveling faster after that. She argued with friends, claimed people were judging her unfairly, posted vague quotes about betrayal and jealousy, framing herself as the target. The irony was painful. One afternoon, I ran into her new boyfriend at a gas station. He looked tired, not angry, just worn down. Hey, he said awkwardly. I nodded. Hey. He hesitated. She talks about you a lot. That told me everything. Rachel wasn't surprised when I told her. Relationships built on secrecy don't survive exposure, she said. Even indirect exposure. I asked her then, quietly, why are you helping me like this? Rachel thought for a long moment. Because I've been Emily, she said finally. A long time ago. And I learned the hard way that the only real consequence is being seen clearly. That night, we crossed a line, not physically, but emotionally. I told Rachel I was afraid of becoming cold, of losing empathy. She held my face and said, empathy doesn't mean shielding people from the outcomes of their choices. Emily made one last attempt to regain control. She posted a long message, half apology, half justification, carefully worded to make herself look self-aware while still avoiding responsibility. It backfired. Comments were polite, neutral, but the silence underneath them said everything. No one rushed to defend her. No one argued on her behalf. She deleted the post within an hour. I realized then that this wasn't revenge in the way I'd imagined months ago. There was no triumph, no celebration, just clarity. Rachel and I sat together later that night, the town quiet around us. Do you regret it? She asked. I thought about Emily, about who I was before everything broke. No, I said, but I'm done. Rachel smiled, not victorious, not smug, just relieved. Good, she said, because the rest of this story isn't about her. The shift from survival to choice was subtle, but once I noticed it, I couldn't unsee it. For months, every decision I made had been reactive, responding to pain, betrayal, or the absence of both. Now, for the first time, nothing was pushing me. I had to decide where to step on my own. Rachel felt it too. You're different lately, she said one afternoon as we walked through the old park near the edge of town. Quieter, not withdrawn, just deliberate. I think I'm finally listening to myself, I replied. She smiled. That can be dangerous. I knew what she meant. Self-awareness doesn't always lead you where you expect to go. Around that time, an unexpected opportunity came up. A job offer in a city 2 hours away. Better pay, more growth, less history. It was the kind of chance I would have ignored before because it didn't fit the life I'd built with Emily. Now, it scared me for a different reason. I told Rachel that night. She didn't react immediately. No reassurance. No disappointment. Just thought. That's a real decision, she said finally. Not a distraction. Does it change things? I asked. Rachel leaned back, Looking up at the ceiling. It might. And pretending it won't would be dishonest. That answer should have hurt. Instead, it felt respectful. Emily's absence made room for these questions. Without her shadow, I could finally see the shape of my own future, and it didn't automatically align with Rachel's. That realization scared me more than losing Emily ever had. A week later, I ran into Emily's sister at the post office. She looked tired, older than I remembered. "She's not doing great," she said quietly. "But she's trying." I nodded. "I hope she figures things out." And I meant it. That was when I knew the anger was gone. Rachel and I talked more honestly after that. About timelines, expectations, the reality that our connection had formed in the aftermath of something broken. "I don't regret us," Rachel said one night. "But I won't trap you in a chapter that was meant to end." I took her hand. "I don't want to run just because things get real." She squeezed back. "Neither do I. But real doesn't mean permanent." The job offer deadline loomed. I accepted it 2 days before the cutoff. Rachel hugged me when I told her. Long tight. Not like someone losing something, but like someone proud. "I knew you would," she said. The weeks leading up to the move were strange. Tender. Heavy. We spent time together differently, more intentionally. Less distraction. More presence. On my last night in town, we sat on the porch one final time. "You know," I said, "this started because someone betrayed me." Rachel nodded. "And it's ending because you chose yourself." I looked at her then, not as the woman who helped me get revenge or guided me through pain, but as someone who met me exactly where I was and refused to let me stay there forever. "I don't know what happens next," I admitted. Rachel smiled softly. "Neither do I. And that's okay." For the first time, uncertainty didn't feel like loss. It felt like possibility. Moving out of the small town was surreal. Boxes stacked in my apartment like evidence of a life left behind. Every corner held memories, some sharp, some dull. I didn't miss Emily, not really. Not in the way I used to. What I felt was a strange combination of relief and apprehension, like stepping off a cliff you didn't know was there until you were halfway down. Rachel had helped me pack. Quietly, efficiently. Not hovering, not offering too much advice. Just presence. Her calmness was contagious, and I found myself thinking, for the first time, about life without constantly replaying betrayals and mistakes. Before I left, she gave me a small notebook. Plain cover. Nothing written inside. "For you," she said. "To fill with the next version of yourself." I smiled, feeling a little ridiculous. "You really think I can do that?" Rachel leaned against the doorframe. "I know you can. And if you can't, at least you'll have tried." We hugged then. Not lingering. Not hesitant. Just acknowledgement. Mutual respect. Something far more meaningful than anything either of us had expected when we first met over coffee months ago. Driving away, I passed familiar streets, empty lots, and the old park where Rachel had once remarked on my deliberate pace. I didn't feel regret. I felt clarity. Emily's betrayal had been a starting point, not the ending. And Rachel, well, Rachel had been the bridge between the two. The first weeks in the new city were jarring. Noise, people, movement everywhere. But I felt ready. I explored, made new friends, found small places that reminded me of the coffee shop where Rachel and I had met. Each step forward was deliberate, each choice intentional, a quiet rebellion against the chaos of the past. Rachel and I kept in touch. Not obsessively, not constantly, just enough. Messages that were honest but didn't tether me to her. Calls that were grounding without being controlling. It was different from anything I had known. And I liked it. One evening, I returned to the city apartment after a long day at work. My phone buzzed. It was a photo from Rachel. A sunset over the park near the coffee shop. No message, just an image. I stared at it longer than necessary. Felt a wave of gratitude that I didn't quite know how to name. Not for the revenge we'd orchestrated. Not for Emily's absence. But for Rachel. For teaching me patience. Perspective. Power without malice. Love without possession. Emily, from what I could gather through distant social media, had eventually left the town altogether. New city. New job. New life. I didn't wish her ill. Not really. Just peace. And maybe a little humility. But that, I figured, life would provide in its own time. Rachel visited me a month later. We explored the city together, quiet afternoons walking streets that had no history of pain for me. And yet, every conversation, every shared glance, carried the weight of what we'd gone through. not as a burden, but as a foundation. "You've changed," she said, as we sat in a small cafe, watching rain streak the windows. "Yeah," I replied, "but I'm still me." She smiled, "And I still like that version." The honesty in her words, the absence of drama or pretense, made me realize how far I'd come. Betrayal had been a starting point, Rachel had been a guide, but the destination was mine alone. I kept the notebook she'd given me. Slowly, I began filling it. Notes, dreams, small victories, reminders not to react out of fear or anger. Each page was a step toward building a self I could be proud of, independent, aware, and, for the first time, entirely responsible for my own happiness. By the time the first month ended, Emily existed only as a faint memory, a lesson, a spark that set everything else into motion. And Rachel? She was no longer a shadow from the past. She was, unmistakably, part of my future, though not a fixed one. Fluid, honest, real. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. And that peace was everything I had been chasing. Months passed, and life in the new city settled into a rhythm I hadn't thought I'd find so quickly. Work, friends, small routines that felt like they belonged to me and no one else. And Rachel, she became a constant, though never a chain. We weren't living together. We weren't labeling what we had. But her presence felt essential, grounding, a reminder of what patience and understanding could build. One evening, I was walking home after a late shift when I realized something strange. I didn't think about Emily at all. Not once. The anger, the betrayal, the confusion, they were shadows I'd carried too long, and now they had faded. It wasn't because I'd ignored them. It was because I had processed them, with Rachel's help. Carefully. Honestly. Rachel called that night. We met at a small diner downtown, both of us craving nothing more than coffee and quiet conversation. She looked at me across the table and smiled. "You're lighter," she said. "Not just physically. Emotionally." I laughed softly. "I think I finally stopped carrying what wasn't mine to carry." She nodded. "Good. Now it's time to think about what's yours." For a moment, the word ours almost slipped into my mind. I caught it and didn't say it. Not yet. Rachel had taught me that the timing of words mattered as much as the words themselves. That same week, I received a surprising message. From Emily. Short, polite, no blame, no anger, just an acknowledgement. "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're okay." I showed it to Rachel. She read it quickly and looked up at me, her expression unreadable. "Closure," she said simply. Finally, it was, not because of the words themselves, but because of how far I'd come. I didn't need her apology. I didn't even need her acknowledgement. I needed peace. And I had it. That night, I thought back to the early days. Emily's betrayal, the late-night texts, the feeling of being hollow inside. It seemed almost unreal now, a distant memory that had shaped me but no longer controlled me. Rachel and I spent the weekend exploring the city together. Art galleries, quiet parks, streets I had never walked before. Every corner felt like a new page, and I felt ready to write my story without the weight of the past dragging me down. On Sunday evening, we sat on a bench overlooking the river. The water reflected the city lights, shimmering like fragments of all the experiences that had led me here. "I never thanked you," I said softly. "For what?" Rachel asked. "For seeing me. For not letting me stay broken. For teaching me that revenge isn't about the other person. It's about reclaiming yourself." She looked at me with something like pride, or maybe satisfaction. "You did the work, Logan. I just guided you." The simplicity of her words struck me. She hadn't needed drama or control. She hadn't demanded loyalty or gratitude. She had simply existed as a mirror, showing me the parts of myself I had lost. I reached for her hand. "I think I finally understand what you meant by control. It's not about punishing anyone. It's about steering yourself." Rachel squeezed my hand gently. Exactly. The city lights reflected in her eyes, calm and steady, and I felt a profound sense of clarity. This wasn't a story about betrayal anymore. It was a story about growth, choices, and trust. About learning to carry pain without letting it define you. Emily had been the spark. Rachel had been the guide. But I had become the one shaping the outcome. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Free from anger. Free from the past. Free to be who I wanted to be. The future wasn't certain, but for the first time, uncertainty didn't scare me. It felt like possibility. The months that followed marked a new chapter. Logan, now 25, wasn't defined by Emily's betrayal anymore. That part of his life had become a lesson, painful, humbling, and essential, but not a chain. The small town he'd left behind faded into memory, leaving only the quiet knowledge of what he had endured and overcome. Rachel, 35, remained a constant in his life, though their connection had evolved into something neither of them tried to label. It was companionship, trust, and subtle passion, a slow burn that respected boundaries yet acknowledged desire. She had taught him more than patience. She had shown him how to live deliberately, to take control of his choices, and to navigate the aftermath of hurt without losing himself. One night, sitting on the balcony of his new apartment, Logan reflected on everything. Emily's messages had stopped. Her social media had gone quiet. She had moved on, or at least tried. Logan didn't harbor resentment. There was no sense of victory in her absence, only closure. Every moment of anger, every sleepless night, every pang of betrayal had ultimately led him here, to clarity. He thought about the first time he had met Rachel in that quiet coffee shop. The nervous, broken version of himself had barely recognized the depth of the connection that would form. He remembered the subtle lessons, the importance of silence, the power of observation, and the realization that revenge wasn't about punishing someone else, but reclaiming oneself. Rachel's influence had been deliberate. She had never pushed him, never demanded, never manipulated. Instead, she guided him to see what he already had the strength to do. Logan realized that she had been his mirror, reflecting the person he could become if he stopped being defined by someone else's choices. That realization was liberating. For the first time, he felt entirely responsible for his happiness. No one else's actions could dictate his emotions. He had agency, and with Rachel by his side, there was no need to fear the complexity of life or the messiness of human relationships. She had shown him that love wasn't about possession but partnership, not about control but understanding. The final test of his growth came unexpectedly. Logan received a letter from Emily. No accusatory tone, no manipulation, just acknowledgement and apology. "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're finding your way." He read it, set it aside, and felt nothing but neutrality. Not satisfaction, not guilt, simply closure. Emily had her own path, and he had his. Neither was better or worse. They were separate stories, intersecting only briefly. Logan glanced at Rachel, who was reading on the couch nearby. The way she looked up and met his eyes made him smile. There was a shared understanding between them, a quiet acknowledgement that the past had shaped them, but it no longer owned them. He reached for the notebook Rachel had given him months ago, the one he had started filling with thoughts, plans, and reflections. The pages were filled with reminders to act deliberately, to honor his growth, and to nurture connections without fear. For the first time, the notebook felt complete, not because it documented revenge or pain, but because it captured transformation. Logan realized that the story he had once thought was about betrayal had become something entirely different. It was about resilience, emotional intelligence, and the power of human connection. It was about the quiet strength it takes to rise above anger, to forgive oneself for misjudgments, and to embrace love that is patient, honest, and mutual. He closed the notebook, set it on the table, and looked out at the city lights. Rachel joined him, hand in hand. They didn't need words. The silence between them was enough, a testament to the journey they had shared, the lessons they had learned, and the future they were free to build together. Logan smiled. The past had shaped him, but it did not define him. And for the first time, he felt not only free but truly alive. The end.